Liam, an 8-year-old boy with a strong sense of right and wrong, always believed in protecting those he loved, no matter how hard it was. One day, on what was supposed to be the happiest day of his father's life, Liam made a decision that changed everything. As he watches his dad about to marry Isabella, a woman who has been hiding dark secrets, Ethan steps forward to reveal a shocking truth that no one could have imagined. His bold move stops the wedding in its tracks. But what happens next leaves everyone stunned. Why did Liam's revelation lead to such dramatic consequences? How did this young boy's courage uncover the truth about his father's fiancée? And what ripple effects did it have on their lives? Stay tuned to find out. Before we dive into the main story, kindly hit the subscribe button and let us know where you're watching from in the comments section. If you've already subscribed to our channel, thank you so much. May God bless you and your family. So now, without wasting any time, let's start the main story. It was a bright, sunny morning, and the house was buzzing with excitement. Nathan, a kind-hearted man in his late 30s, was getting ready for the most important day of his life. His wedding to Isabella, his fiancée, was just hours away. For weeks, Nathan had been talking about nothing else. His eyes sparkled every time he mentioned her name. Liam, Nathan's 8-year-old son, wasn't as excited. He sat by the window, watching as the carriages arrived and the guests began to gather outside their home. He fidgeted with his fingers, looking up at his father, who was busy making sure everything was perfect. "Why does she have to get married today, Dad?" Liam asked quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. Nathan looked down at him with a smile, patting his son's head. "What do you mean, buddy? Today is supposed to be the happiest day for both of us." Liam hesitated. He didn't want to spoil his father's happiness, but something felt wrong about Isabella. She wasn't the same when Nathan wasn't around. Sometimes when Nathan went to work or left the house, Isabella's smile would vanish, and her eyes would grow cold. "You know," Liam started, his voice shaky. She doesn't always treat me the way you think." Nathan knelt down beside him, brushing a stray lock of hair from his face. "Is this about the time she told you to stop playing in the garden?" Liam nodded, but he didn't explain further. He had seen too many things that made him uncomfortable, things he couldn't quite put into words. Isabella was always kind when Nathan was near, but when he wasn't, she would shout at Liam or even ignore him completely. "I'm sure you're just nervous about the wedding," Nathan said, standing up. "Don't worry, Liam. Everything will be perfect. You'll see. I promise." Liam wasn't convinced, but he didn't say anything more. He just stared out the window, watching his father go back to arranging the decorations for the ceremony. He had a sinking feeling in his stomach, like something was about to go terribly wrong. Suddenly, Liam's eyes caught something that made his heart race. In the middle of the garden, where Nathan couldn't see, Isabella was talking to a stranger in a low voice. She handed the stranger something small and shiny. Liam squinted to get a better look. Was it a key? His curiosity got the best of him, and Liam quietly slipped out the back door, his feet barely making a sound on the grass. He hid behind the large oak tree, peeking around it to watch. The stranger was tall, dressed in a dark suit, and seemed very serious. Isabella smiled sweetly, but there was something in her eyes that didn't seem right. Liam's heart pounded in his chest as he tried to make sense of what he was seeing. He knew he couldn't tell his father about this just yet. Nathan would think he was imagining things, but the more he watched, the more he felt like Isabella was hiding something dangerous. The wedding was only hours away, and Liam felt the weight of what he might have to do. He had to find out what was going on. Something told him that this wasn't just a wedding. It was a trap. Liam pressed himself against the rough bark of the oak tree, his small fingers gripping it tightly as he listened. Isabella's voice was calm but sharp, like a blade hidden in silk. "Everything is set," she whispered to the man in the dark suit. "Nathan won't suspect a thing." Liam swallowed hard. Set? Set for what? His father thought today was the happiest day of his life, but something about Isabella's tone sent a chill down Liam's spine. The man in the suit glanced around before speaking. "And the papers? The insurance policy?" Isabella smirked. "Signed and ready. Once the wedding is done, we move to the next step." Liam clenched his fists. Next step? What did that mean? He didn't understand everything they were saying, but one thing was clear. This wasn't about love. Isabella was planning something bad. The man checked his watch. Be careful. The boy is sharp. Kids notice things. Liam held his breath, his heart pounding so loudly he feared they would hear it. Liam? Isabella scoffed. He's just a child. Nathan dotes on him too much, but in the end, it doesn't matter. Once everything is done, neither of them will be in my way. Liam felt like the ground beneath him had disappeared. Neither of them? Was she planning to hurt his father? And him too? He had to do something. Just then, Isabella's eyes flickered toward the tree where Liam was hiding. Did she see him? He held still, barely daring to breathe. I should go, the man said, slipping a small envelope into Isabella's hand. Make sure you don't mess this up. Isabella huffed. Don't worry. Nathan believes every word I say. The man nodded and walked off, disappearing around the corner of the house. Isabella stood for a moment, her lips curled into a satisfied smile as she tucked the envelope into her dress. Then, with a graceful turn, she headed back inside. Liam finally let out the breath he had been holding. His chest was tight, his hands sweaty. He needed to tell his father. Now. But as he turned to run back inside, a shadow fell over him. Well, well, Isabella's voice rang out sweetly, but there was poison underneath it. What are you doing out here, sweetheart? Liam spun around, his pulse racing. Isabella was standing right in front of him, her usual fake smile plastered on her face. But this time, her eyes weren't kind. They were cold and calculating. I was just getting some fresh air, Liam stammered, trying to sound normal. Isabella studied him for a long moment, then bent down so her face was level with his. You know, Liam, she said softly, tucking a stray hair behind his ear, sometimes it's best not to see things that aren't there. Do you understand? Liam's throat went dry. He nodded, though he didn't mean it. Isabella's smile widened. Good boy. Now let's get you inside. The wedding is about to start. She reached for his hand, but Liam pulled away. He forced a small smile. I need to grab something from my room first. Isabella watched him for a moment, her expression unreadable. Then, with a shrug, she turned and walked back toward the house. Liam waited until she was inside before running in the opposite direction, his mind racing. He didn't have much time. He had to stop this wedding before it was too late. Liam's heart raced as he sprinted up the stairs to his room. He didn't know exactly what he was going to do, but he couldn't just sit back and wait. He had to find a way to expose Isabella, to stop her before it was too late. He locked the door behind him and quickly ran to his desk, pulling out a small notebook. His father had given it to him for his last birthday, and it had become his secret place to write down everything. Thoughts, ideas, things he couldn't say aloud. Liam flipped through the pages, looking for something to help him make sense of what he had just heard. His mind raced. Insurance policy. The next step. Neither of them will be in my way. The words echoed in his head, the meaning finally starting to form. Isabella's not just after Dad's money. She's planning something bad, something dangerous. But what exactly was she going to do? And why was she so focused on both of them? Suddenly, a thought struck Liam like a bolt of lightning. The wedding. She'd planned everything for today. But why? What could she do at the wedding that would make her plan work? Liam's stomach twisted as he thought about the life insurance policy. Was Isabella planning to kill Dad? The idea seemed too terrible to be true, but the more he thought about it, the more it made sense. She'd been nice to him when Nathan was around, but when Nathan was away, she'd been cold, almost cruel. She must have been hiding her true self the whole time. There was only one way to find out for sure. Liam grabbed the small flashlight he kept in his drawer and slipped quietly down the hall. He needed to find Isabella's room. If she was hiding something, that's where it would be. The envelope, the papers, the proof. He crept down the staircase, trying to avoid the creaky steps. The house was quiet, but he could still hear the faint sound of the wedding preparations outside. He wasn't sure how much time he had, but he had to move fast. The hallway at the end of the house was dim, lit only by a single lamp. Liam stopped at the door to Isabella's room and listened. He didn't hear anything, so he slowly turned the handle. The door creaked open, and he stepped inside. Isabella's room was grand but cold, just like her. The bed was perfectly made, and the furniture was all polished and pristine, but there was no warmth in the space. It felt like a place someone went to hide, not to live. Liam's eyes scanned the room. He didn't know exactly what he was looking for, but he had to be careful. He moved to the desk, opening drawers one by one. Each drawer held something harmless. Old papers, a few pens, a piece of jewelry, but there was nothing unusual. His heart sank. What if there's nothing here? What if I'm too late? Then his eyes landed on the wardrobe. It was a large, dark wooden piece with an old-fashioned lock on it. Liam's breath caught in his throat. What was inside? He approached slowly, his hands trembling as he reached for the lock. He had no key, but he didn't need one. He tugged at the lock, and to his surprise, it gave way with a small click. Inside, there were clothes, neatly arranged in rows. But behind them, something was hidden. A large, thick envelope sat at the back of the wardrobe, almost as if it had been placed there deliberately. Liam's fingers shook as he pulled it out. The envelope was heavy, sealed tightly with a wax stamp. He could feel the weight of it in his hands. This was it, the evidence he needed. He quickly opened it, pulling out a series of papers. His eyes skimmed through the documents, bank statements, contracts, and at the very top, a life insurance policy with Nathan's name on it. The amount written on it made Liam's head spin. It was enough to ruin his father's life. Liam's stomach twisted in knots as he read the fine print. Isabella was the sole beneficiary. She was going to take everything. And the more he read, the more he realized that she hadn't just planned to marry Nathan. She had planned to kill him for the money. A loud bang from downstairs made Liam jump. Someone's coming. He shoved the papers back into the envelope and stuffed it into his pocket, his heart hammering in his chest. He darted back to the door, closing it gently behind him. He had to get back to his room, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. As he stepped into the hall, he glanced toward the staircase. Isabella was standing there, her eyes narrowed as she stared directly at him. Liam froze. Just going to the bathroom, he stammered, forcing a nervous smile. Isabella didn't respond at first. She just studied him for a moment, her gaze cold and calculating. Then, without a word, she turned and walked away. Liam let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. He had to tell his father. Now. But the question was, how could he do it without Isabella finding out what he knew? Liam could feel the weight of the envelope in his pocket, pressing against him with every step. His mind was racing, but he knew one thing for sure. He had to warn his dad. Now. He had no idea what Isabella might do next, but it was clear that the wedding wasn't just a celebration. It was part of her plan. He moved quickly but quietly, keeping to the shadows as he made his way to the kitchen. Nathan was there, talking to the caterers, making sure everything was perfect for the wedding. Liam paused in the doorway, his heart thumping loudly in his chest. "Dad?" Liam's voice was barely a whisper. Nathan looked up and smiled, his face lighting up at the sight of his son. "Hey, buddy, what's going on? You should be getting ready for the ceremony." Liam swallowed hard, his throat dry. "How do I tell him? How can I make him believe me?" "Dad, I need to tell you something important," Liam said, his voice shaking. Nathan raised an eyebrow. "What is it? You look pale. Is everything okay?" Liam hesitated. He wanted to tell his father everything, but a part of him feared what would happen if he did. What if Nathan didn't believe him? What if he thought Liam was just overreacting? I think Isabella is planning something bad. You have to listen to me," Liam said urgently, stepping closer to his father. "She's not who you think she is." Nathan frowned, his expression softening with concern. "Liam, I know you're nervous about the wedding, but Isabella is a good person. She's going to be a great stepmom to you." "No, Dad." Liam's voice cracked with desperation. "I've seen things. She's hiding something. She's planning to hurt you. She wants to take your money." Nathan shook his head, placing a hand on Liam's shoulder. "You're just scared of change, buddy. It's normal to feel that way when someone new is coming into our lives. Isabella loves you, and she loves me. I'm sure of it." Liam's eyes filled with tears, but he refused to cry. He couldn't afford to lose his father's trust. "But I'm not imagining it, Dad. I heard her talking to someone. She's working with someone, and they have a plan. She has a life insurance policy on you, and she's the beneficiary. She wants to." Before Liam could finish, a loud, cheerful voice interrupted him from the doorway. "Everything all right in here?" Isabella appeared, her smile wide and fake, just like it always was when Nathan wasn't around. Her eyes locked onto Liam's with a cold, calculating gaze. Is someone being a little too dramatic? Liam felt a chill run down his spine as he glanced at his father. Nathan, though still skeptical, seemed to sense something off about Isabella's tone. He turned back to Liam, his brow furrowing. Isabella, let's go finish preparing for the ceremony, Nathan said, trying to dismiss the tension in the room. But before he could step forward, Liam grabbed his arm. Dad, please, you have to believe me, please. Liam's voice was a mixture of fear and urgency. Isabella's expression hardened. Liam, you're being rude. I think you need to go to your room and calm down. It's not a good time to cause trouble. No, Liam shouted, his voice trembling with emotion. I'm not causing trouble. I'm trying to save you. She's going to hurt you, Dad. You don't see it, but I do. Please, don't marry her. Nathan's face darkened. He pulled his arm away from Liam, his patience clearly wearing thin. Liam, enough. This is your last warning. Stop this nonsense right now. Liam's heart sank, but he refused to back down. She's lying to you. You don't know what she's really planning. Please. Suddenly, Isabella stepped forward, her smile returning, but there was something menacing behind it now. She placed a hand on Nathan's arm, leaning into him with a soft laugh. Liam's just confused. He'll get over it. We all will. Liam felt his stomach twist. He had to do something before it was too late. He couldn't just sit back and watch everything fall apart. I have proof, Liam blurted out, his voice shaking but determined. I found it. The papers, the life insurance policy. It's all in her wardrobe. I saw it with my own eyes. Nathan's face softened, but just for a moment. He turned to Isabella, his brow furrowed. Is this true? Isabella's face froze for the briefest second before she quickly regained her composure. Nathan, you know I would never do anything to hurt you. She smiled sweetly, trying to reassure him. Liam's just upset. It's not unusual for children to act out when they don't understand things. But Liam could see it now, the way Isabella's eyes darted nervously. She was hiding something. I'm telling the truth, Liam shouted, his voice cracking. You have to believe me. Nathan sighed, looking between Liam and Isabella, his face drawn with worry. Liam, calm down. We'll talk about this later, but right now, the wedding is starting. I'm going to marry Isabella, and we're going to be a family. I need you to understand that. Tears welled up in Liam's eyes, but he wiped them away angrily. No, you don't get it, Dad. She's going to ruin everything. I can't let you do this. Just then, the doorbell rang, signaling the arrival of the guests. Nathan sighed deeply, his frustration evident. This isn't the time, Liam. We'll talk later. Liam's heart sank. He had failed. Isabella was going to win. But as he stood there, helpless, a flicker of hope sparked in his chest. I have the papers. I have the proof. He couldn't give up now. He had to stop the wedding, no matter what it took. And he would. Liam's hands trembled as he watched Nathan and Isabella walk toward the living room, their steps brisk, preparing for the ceremony. His heart ached, but he couldn't give up. Not now. Not ever. He quickly glanced at the envelope in his pocket, the thick papers still burning a hole in his mind. She's going to ruin everything. He knew it. But how could he convince his dad now? After everything, would he believe him? The sound of guests arriving drifted in from the front door, and Liam's thoughts raced. I have to act fast. He quietly slipped out of the kitchen and into the hallway, his mind set on one thing: the wedding. If he could stop it before they exchanged vows, he could stop Isabella. But how? Liam's eyes landed on the living room window, where guests were gathering. It was only a few minutes until the ceremony began. His stomach churned as he thought about how everything was going to play out. Isabella would get away with it if I don't act now. He hurried toward the study, his feet silent on the wooden floors. The study door was closed, and he hesitated for a second. Then, with a deep breath, he pushed it open. Nathan's desk was neatly arranged with papers, photos of him and Liam, and some old books. Nothing unusual. But Liam wasn't looking for anything here. He was looking for the phone. He grabbed it from the drawer and quickly dialed his best friend, Max. Max had been his ally through thick and thin, and Liam needed him now more than ever. Max, you've got to help me, Liam whispered urgently when Max picked up. Isabella's got a life insurance policy on Dad. She's going to hurt him, I'm sure of it. I need you to come here, now. Max's voice came through the phone, filled with concern. What? Life insurance? Liam, what are you talking about? I can't explain all of it, but I have proof, Liam said, glancing nervously toward the door. I've got the papers, but Dad won't believe me, Max. You need to come and we have to stop the wedding. Isabella's a con artist. She's using Dad for money. She'll hurt him. Max paused for a moment, then replied, I'll be there in 5 minutes. Just hang in there. Liam exhaled in relief. He couldn't do this alone. Max was his best friend and he trusted him. Together, they could stop this. He ended the call and ran to his father's office. The papers in his pocket were burning his skin. This is it. Liam carefully opened the envelope, making sure not to tear it. The moment he saw the life insurance policy again, the reality of what he was about to do hit him. This wasn't just a simple misunderstanding. This was life or death for his father. His hands were shaking as he gathered the papers and stuffed them back into the envelope. He had to show them to Nathan. But just as he turned to leave the room, he froze. Isabella stood at the door, her eyes narrowing as she took in the scene. What are you doing in here? She asked, her voice smooth and dangerous. Liam's heart skipped a beat. He couldn't let her know he had the papers. He quickly shoved the envelope back into his pocket and tried to act casual. I was looking for my book, Liam stammered, his voice shaking despite his best effort to sound calm. Isabella smiled slowly, taking a step closer to him. You're not fooling anyone, Liam. I know what you're up to. Liam felt a chill go down his spine. How much had she seen? Did she know? What do you mean? Liam tried to sound innocent, but his voice cracked. She reached out and placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch cold. You think your father will believe you? That he'll listen to you? You're just a child, Liam. You can't stop what's going to happen. It's already too late. Liam's breath caught in his throat. Too late? Was she threatening him? He looked into her eyes, trying to stay calm. You don't know everything, Liam, Isabella said, her voice lowering to a dangerous whisper. You don't know what I'm capable of. I've been planning this for a long time. Liam backed away, his pulse racing. He could feel the weight of the envelope in his pocket, a constant reminder of what was at stake. You're wrong, he whispered, his voice firm. I'll stop you. I'll tell Dad everything. Isabella chuckled darkly, a cold, twisted sound that sent a shiver down his spine. You can try, but you'll fail. Everyone thinks I'm perfect. No one will believe you. And once your father marries me, you'll be nothing but a memory to him. Liam's stomach twisted. He wanted to scream, to fight back, but he knew he had to keep his head. I can't let her win. Just then, the doorbell rang again, louder this time. Isabella turned toward the sound, a small smile curling at the corner of her lips. It's showtime. Before Liam could react, she turned and walked out of the room, leaving him standing there, trembling. I can't let her get away with it. He quickly ran down the stairs, his thoughts on one thing. Max? Max will help me. He has to. As he reached the bottom of the staircase, he saw Isabella talking to the guests, her fake smile back in place. Nathan was there too, shaking hands, looking happy as ever. Liam's heart was pounding as he spotted Max standing just outside the front door. Max gave him a quick nod, and Liam rushed to meet him. This is it, Liam whispered urgently. We have to stop the wedding. We've got to show Dad the papers. Max nodded, his face set with determination. Let's do it. The two of them slipped quietly through the crowd of guests, heading toward the living room where the ceremony was about to begin. It was now or never. Liam clutched the envelope tightly, ready to expose Isabella for who she truly was. He wasn't going to let her ruin everything. Not today. Not ever. And this time, he had the proof to stop her. Liam and Max crept through the guests, blending in as if they were just two excited boys eager to witness the wedding. But inside, Liam's mind was racing, and his hands were trembling, clutching the envelope with the life insurance papers. This was it. He had one chance to stop Isabella and save his father. He couldn't mess it up. They reached the living room door, where the ceremony was set to begin. Guests were seated in neat rows, whispering excitedly, their eyes fixed on the front where Nathan and Isabella were supposed to stand. Isabella was already there, looking picture-perfect in her wedding dress, her smile just as fake as it had been the entire day. Nathan was beside her, still oblivious to the dark truth that was about to unfold. Liam felt a wave of nausea hit him as he watched them. Dad, why can't you see it? Why can't you see what she's really doing to you? Max looked at Liam, his face tense. Are you sure about this? Once you do this, there's no turning back. Liam nodded firmly, his voice steady despite the anxiety bubbling inside him. I have to. She's going to hurt him, Max. She's already tried to manipulate him. I can't let her get away with it. Max gave him a reassuring pat on the back. All right, let's do this. Liam swallowed hard, gathering every ounce of courage he had. He pushed the door open slightly, just enough to slip inside unnoticed. The guests were too caught up in their conversations and the quiet hum of the ceremony preparations to notice the two boys creeping toward the front. Nathan stood near the altar, waiting for Isabella. The officiant was at the podium, ready to start. But just before the ceremony could begin, Liam stepped forward, his voice cutting through the low murmurs of the crowd. "Dad, wait!" he shouted, his voice full of urgency. The room fell silent, heads turned toward him in surprise. Nathan's face immediately shifted from calm to concerned, his eyes scanning the room for his son. "Liam?" Nathan called, his voice a mix of confusion and concern. "What are you doing here? This isn't the time." Isabella's smile faltered for a split second, but she quickly regained her composure, her eyes narrowing at Liam. "She knows. I have to show you something, Dad," Liam said, stepping forward with the envelope in his hand. "It's really important." The guests were still murmuring, unsure of what was happening. The officiant glanced between Nathan and Liam, unsure whether to proceed with the ceremony. Isabella stepped forward, her tone smooth but laced with a touch of impatience. "Liam, sweetie," she said in a sickeningly sweet voice, "this is not the time for interruptions. Please, let's just go sit down, okay? Everyone's waiting." But Liam was determined. He couldn't let her silence him again. He stepped right up to Nathan, holding the envelope out in front of him. "Dad, please, you need to look at this. It's the truth. Isabella's been lying to you." Nathan's face hardened. "Liam, stop. This is ridiculous. Isabella has done nothing but care for you and me. Why can't you just let this go?" But Liam shook his head, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill. He ripped open the envelope and pulled out the papers. "This is it." He thrust them into Nathan's hands. "This is her life insurance policy," Liam said, his voice cracking but steady. "She's listed as the beneficiary. She's planning to hurt you, Dad. She's doing all of this for your money." The room went completely still. For a moment, no one said anything. The only sound was the soft rustling of the papers in Nathan's hands. Nathan stared at the papers, his face pale as realization began to sink in. His hand shook slightly as he scanned the document. What is this?" he whispered, his voice low and disbelieving. "Isabella, is this true?" Isabella's calm exterior cracked for just a moment. She took a step forward, her eyes flashing with fury. "Nathan, this is absurd. These papers are fake. He's just trying to ruin our wedding." But Nathan didn't look at her. He was too focused on the documents in his hand. The silence in the room felt suffocating. He looked back at Liam, his expression unreadable. "Liam, where did you find this?" Nathan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Liam's heart raced. I found them in her wardrobe, hidden behind her clothes. I heard her talking about it with someone. She's been planning this for months. She wants to kill you, Dad. She wants your money." The words seemed to hang in the air, heavy with truth. Isabella's face contorted in anger, and she took a step forward, her voice rising. "Liam, stop this right now," she hissed. "You have no idea what you're talking about. These papers mean nothing. You're just a scared little boy who doesn't want me to be your stepmother." Nathan looked from Liam to Isabella, his face pale as the shock and betrayal washed over him. "Isabella, how could you?" he whispered, the words full of pain. "How could you do this to me? To us?" Isabella's mask of composure shattered completely. She raised her hands in frustration. "You think I would betray you like this? You think I'd hurt you for money? You have no idea how much I've sacrificed for this family." But Nathan wasn't listening anymore. He was too stunned by the truth. He dropped the papers, his gaze fixed on Isabella with disbelief and hurt. I trusted you," Nathan whispered, his voice shaking. "I thought you loved me." The room was dead silent as the reality of what had just happened set in. The guests were stunned, frozen in place, unsure of how to react. Some of them whispered, others shifted uneasily in their seats. Isabella's eyes flickered with panic as the truth began to settle over her. "You don't understand," she spat, her voice turning venomous. "I was doing this for us, for our future. You don't even know what it's like to love someone like I love you." But Nathan was done. His voice was cold now, his face hardening with disgust. "You're sick, Isabella. Get out. Get out of my house. I never want to see you again." The words hit her like a slap. Her eyes went wide with fury, but Nathan's voice was unwavering. He wasn't going to let her manipulate him anymore. She had been exposed, and her power over him was gone. Liam stepped forward, standing beside his father. This wasn't over yet. There was still the police to deal with, but they had won the first battle. Isabella glared at them, her chest heaving in anger. "You think you've won? You haven't seen the last of me," she spat before storming out of the room, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. Liam watched her go, his heart still pounding. It wasn't over yet, but it felt like a victory. Nathan turned to him, his face softening. "Liam, I don't know what to say. You saved my life. Thank you." Liam looked up at his dad, his heart swelling with relief. "I just wanted to keep you safe, Dad. I love you." Nathan knelt down to hug him, and Liam wrapped his arms around him tightly. They didn't need words anymore. They had each other. And that was all that mattered. The guests were still in shock. Some were whispering among themselves, unsure how to process what had just happened. Others were slowly rising from their seats, glancing between Nathan, Liam, and the door where Isabella had stormed out. It was a scene of utter confusion. Nathan stood up slowly, his hand resting on Liam's shoulder. His face was pale, and his expression was a mix of disbelief and guilt. He glanced at the papers on the floor, the life insurance documents that had exposed Isabella's twisted plan. For a moment, his mind raced. How had he been so blind? How had he let someone like Isabella into their lives? Liam could feel the weight of his father's gaze. He knew Nathan was probably wrestling with the same thoughts. "Dad," Liam began softly, his voice quiet but firm. "I'm sorry I had to do this. I didn't want to ruin the wedding, but I couldn't let her hurt you." Nathan's eyes softened, and he knelt down in front of Liam, placing a hand on his son's cheek. "No, Liam, you were right to stop it. I should have listened to you sooner. I'm the one who should be sorry." Tears welled up in Liam's eyes, but he quickly wiped them away. He couldn't remember the last time his dad had apologized to him. This moment, as painful as it was, made him feel like they were on the same side for the first time in a long while. "Thank you, son," Nathan whispered. "You saved my life. I don't even know how to begin to make it up to you." Liam smiled, though it was small. "You don't have to make it up, Dad. Just promise me you'll be careful from now on. No one can be trusted the way Isabella was." Nathan nodded, his expression solemn. "I promise, Liam. I'll be more careful. I don't know what I was thinking." Before they could say anything more, the sound of police sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder as they approached. Nathan looked toward the window, his face hardening as he realized what was happening. The truth was out. Isabella's scheme was exposed, and now there would be consequences. Liam reached into his pocket and pulled out the envelope again, the papers now slightly crumpled from the rush of the past few moments. He handed them to Nathan, who looked at them one last time before nodding in grim recognition. "I'll call the police myself," Nathan said, his voice resolute. But as Nathan turned to grab his phone, the door to the living room opened again, and a familiar face stepped inside, Max. His eyes darted between Nathan and Liam, seeing the tension that still hung in the air. "You did it," Max said quietly, walking up to Liam. "You really stopped her." Liam smiled weakly. "Yeah, but I don't think it's over yet." Max nodded, his expression serious. "I know, but you did the right thing." Nathan turned back to them, holding up his phone. "I've called the police. They're on their way. We'll need to give them all the information we have." And his voice trailed off as he glanced toward the door where Isabella had disappeared. "We'll have to make sure she's held accountable for everything." The weight of what was happening began to sink in. This wasn't just a failed wedding or a petty betrayal. Isabella's actions had put their lives in danger, physically, emotionally, and financially. The police would need to investigate everything, from the life insurance policy to her past actions. They couldn't let her get away with it. As the sirens grew closer, Liam felt his heart begin to slow. He didn't know what was going to happen next, but he did know one thing. His dad would be safe now. And that was all that mattered. The police arrived minutes later, 2 officers stepping into the living room. They were efficient, professional, and quick to take control of the situation. One officer, a tall woman with short-cropped hair, introduced herself as Officer Martinez, while the other, a younger man named Officer Davis, began taking notes and photographing the life insurance documents. Nathan stood by, explaining the situation in as much detail as he could, while Liam and Max stood a little apart, trying not to intrude, but still feeling the weight of everything that had just happened. "Isabella's gone, I assume?" Officer Martinez asked as she glanced around the room, noting Isabella's absence. "She left," Nathan replied grimly. "I don't know where she went, but she's not coming back. I don't want her in my life anymore." "We'll need to file a report and conduct a thorough investigation," Officer Davis said. "But don't worry, we'll make sure she's tracked down and held responsible for her actions." Liam felt a sense of relief wash over him. For the first time in what felt like forever, things were starting to fall into place. His dad was going to be okay. Isabella would face the consequences of her lies, and they could begin to heal. The officers left soon after, promising to keep in touch and update them on the investigation. Nathan was silent for a while, staring at the door where Isabella had exited. "I can't believe I almost married her," Nathan finally said, his voice thick with regret. "I was so caught up in the idea of having someone, anyone, to fill the space your mom left. I didn't see what was right in front of me." Liam stepped closer to him, feeling the bond between them grow stronger. "You don't have to feel bad, Dad. You didn't know, but you know now. And that's what matters." Nathan smiled at him, a sad but genuine smile. "You're right. I'll make better decisions from here on out. I'll listen to you more, Liam. I promise." Liam smiled back. "I know, and I'll always be here to help you, Dad. We've got each other." Max, who had been quiet for a while, finally spoke up. "You guys have been through a lot today, but there's one thing I know for sure." He looked at Liam, his grin reappearing. "You're a hero." Liam laughed, shaking his head. "I don't feel like a hero. I just did what I had to." Nathan placed a hand on Liam's shoulder. "Well, you are. You saved me, and I'll never forget that." With the worst behind them, Liam felt the storm finally begin to settle. The sun was starting to set, casting a soft, golden glow through the windows. It wasn't over, not yet, but they were going to be okay. Together, they could face anything. And for the first time in a long time, Liam felt a weight lift off his chest. There would be tough days ahead, and the pain of betrayal would take time to heal. But with his father by his side, nothing seemed impossible. As night fell and they sat together in the living room, Liam's thoughts turned to the future. The wedding might have been a disaster, but it marked the beginning of something far more important, a new chapter for him and his father. They were a team, and nothing would ever change that. And for now, that was enough. The days following the disastrous wedding were strange. The house, which had once been filled with excitement and preparations, now felt eerily quiet. The decorations had been taken down, the guests had all left, and Isabella was gone. Nathan spent most of his time in his study, speaking with lawyers and police officers about Isabella's fraud. The investigation was moving quickly, and it turned out Isabella had a long history of deception. Liam had overheard one of the officers saying that she had pulled similar schemes on other men before, but this time she had been caught before she could do any real damage. Liam, on the other hand, tried to get back to normal. Max had been over every day since the incident, keeping him company, playing video games, and talking about everything except Isabella. That was how Max helped, by reminding Liam that life wasn't just about the scary moments. One afternoon, Liam found his dad sitting on the back porch, staring at the sunset with a faraway look in his eyes. He hesitated before stepping outside. "Hey, Dad," Liam said softly. Nathan glanced at him and smiled, though it was small. "Hey, buddy, come sit with me." Liam climbed onto the porch swing next to him. For a moment, they sat in silence, watching the sky change colors. "You've been quiet lately," Liam finally said. Nathan sighed. "I've just been thinking. About everything." Liam looked down at his hands. "About Isabella?" Nathan nodded. "Yeah, and about how close I came to making the biggest mistake of my life." Liam shifted uncomfortably. He knew his dad was hurting, but he also knew this was something they had to talk about. "You didn't know, Dad? She tricked you." "I should have seen it," Nathan admitted. "I ignored the warning signs. I let my own loneliness blind me." Liam bit his lip. He had never thought of his dad as lonely before, but now that he thought about it, it made sense. Ever since his mom passed away, Nathan had tried so hard to keep things together. Maybe Isabella had been his way of trying to fill that missing space. "You still have me," Liam said quietly. Nathan turned to him, his expression softening. "I know, Liam, and that's what matters most." Liam hesitated before speaking again. "Are you okay?" Nathan exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "I will be. It's going to take time, but we'll be okay." Liam nodded, believing him. "Good." They sat in silence for a while longer, the cool evening breeze wrapping around them like a comforting blanket. The weight that had been pressing on their family for weeks was finally beginning to lift. Then, out of nowhere, Nathan chuckled. "What?" Liam asked, raising an eyebrow. Nathan shook his head, still smiling. "I just realized you really did stop a wedding." "How many kids get to say that?" Liam grinned. "Yeah, well, someone had to do it." Nathan ruffled Liam's hair. "I don't know what I'd do without you, kid." Liam leaned into his father's side, feeling safe for the first time in a long time. "You'll never have to find out." And in that moment, Liam knew that no matter what happened next, they were going to be okay. It had been a week since the police had taken Isabella away. The house was slowly returning to normal, though there was an undeniable change in the air. For Nathan and Liam, life wasn't quite the same anymore. Their bond had grown stronger, and they were taking things day by day, rebuilding trust and adjusting to the new reality without Isabella's shadow hanging over them. Liam had been hearing bits and pieces from the police about the investigation. It turned out that Isabella wasn't just after Nathan's money. She was involved in a much bigger scheme. The insurance fraud had been only the tip of the iceberg. She had connections to a network of con artists that spanned across several states. In fact, it wasn't just Nathan who was her target. There were others too, but Nathan had unknowingly been her biggest prize. But Liam wasn't thinking about that at the moment. What occupied his thoughts more than anything was how he had exposed Isabella. It felt strange to him, like something from a dream. He was just a kid, but somehow his gut instincts had been right, and because of that, they were free from her grip. Nathan had been getting phone calls from reporters, police officers, and even old friends who had heard about what happened. He hadn't given many interviews, but he did talk to the police whenever they needed more information. The truth, it seemed, was slowly coming to light, and the more people found out, the more they realized how close Nathan had come to marrying a woman who could have destroyed their lives. One evening, after dinner, Nathan was on the phone in the kitchen with a detective from the fraud department. Liam sat in the living room, trying to focus on his homework, but distracted by the low murmur of his dad's voice. "Yeah, I understand. But what about her accomplices?" "Is anyone else involved?" Nathan asked, his voice serious. "She can't be the only one." Liam strained to hear the detective's response. "I see. You'll keep me updated, right?" He could hear Nathan's frustrated sigh. "I just want to make sure we're not missing anything. I can't believe I was so blind." Liam set his pencil down, standing up. He walked toward the kitchen and leaned against the doorframe. Nathan glanced over at him, his expression tired but still soft. "Everything okay, Dad?" Liam asked. Nathan lowered the phone and rubbed his eyes. "Yeah, just the usual follow-up stuff. They're trying to track down some of her associates. It's been a lot to take in, honestly." "Do you need help with anything?" Liam offered. Nathan smiled at him, shaking his head. "No, you've done enough already. You've been my rock through all this, Liam. I don't think I could have gotten through it without you." Liam smiled, though it was tinged with sadness. "I just did what anyone would do." Nathan's face softened. "No, you did what you would do, and that made all the difference. You were brave enough to stand up and tell the truth when no one else would listen. I don't think I can ever thank you enough for that." Liam blushed, feeling a bit embarrassed by his dad's praise. "It's no big deal, Dad." But Nathan shook his head. "It is a big deal. You saved me from making a huge mistake. I'll never forget that." Liam felt a lump form in his throat, but before he could respond, his phone buzzed on the couch. He quickly glanced at it, seeing a message from Max. "Max, hey, want to hang out tomorrow? Got a new game to show you." Liam smiled, typing back quickly. "Sure, you free after school?" Max replied almost instantly. "Of course, see you then." Liam put his phone down, looking at his dad. "Max wants to hang out tomorrow. You okay with that?" Nathan nodded. "Of course. You deserve to have some fun after everything that's happened." Liam smiled. It was the first time in a while that he felt like things were starting to settle, even if it was just a little bit. "Thanks, Dad," Liam said, his voice sincere. "You've been good to me. I know things haven't been easy, but I think we're getting through it." Nathan reached over and pulled Liam into a hug. "We are, and we'll keep getting through it together," Liam smiled, feeling the warmth of his dad's embrace. He didn't know what the future held, but he was starting to believe that no matter what, they would be okay. As the days passed, more details about Isabella's past began to emerge. Nathan was contacted by an old friend from his work who had been a victim of Isabella's scheme a few years ago. The police had uncovered more fake identities and documents tied to her, as well as several bank accounts that had been siphoning money from men she had conned over the years. The truth about her was uglier than anyone had imagined. But even with all the chaos and revelations, Nathan and Liam found themselves slowly moving forward. They spent weekends together, watching movies, playing games, and just being a family again. It wasn't perfect, but it was healing. One evening, as Nathan and Liam sat on the back porch, watching the sunset, Nathan spoke up. "I've been thinking about something," Nathan said, looking over at his son. Liam turned to him, waiting. "I think it's time I start dating again," Nathan continued, his tone careful but sincere. "Not to replace your mom, but just to see if there's someone out there who I can build a life with. But this time, I'll be careful. I won't rush into anything. And I want you to be a part of it. I don't want to make any more decisions without you." Liam thought about it for a moment, then nodded slowly. "I think that sounds good, Dad, but just promise me you'll listen to me if something doesn't feel right." "I promise," Nathan said, smiling warmly at his son. "I'll listen to you first. Always." As the sky darkened and the stars began to twinkle, Liam felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in a long time. The storm of the past few weeks had passed, and though the wounds would take time to heal, he knew they were on the right path now. They had each other, and that was enough. Together, they could face whatever came next. The days grew warmer as summer approached. The house, once filled with tension and uncertainty, now hummed with quiet contentment. The aftershocks of the wedding disaster had finally settled, and though the memories of Isabella's deceit would always linger, Nathan and Liam had begun to rebuild their lives in the only way they knew how, together. Max came over nearly every day after school, and the two boys resumed their adventures. Whether it was playing video games, biking through the neighborhood, or talking about their favorite shows. For Liam, it was a return to the simple joys of childhood, a welcome distraction from the events that had once felt like a nightmare. Nathan, too, seemed lighter. He had taken small steps to re-enter the world of dating. A few casual meetups, some coffee dates, but nothing serious yet. And whenever he found someone he thought might be worth pursuing, he would talk to Liam about it first, making sure they were both comfortable with it. Slowly, Nathan realized that building a new relationship wasn't about replacing the past, but about finding someone who could add to the life he had, someone who could embrace both him and his son. One afternoon, as Nathan and Liam were sitting on the porch sipping lemonade, a car pulled into the driveway. It was a car they hadn't seen before, bright blue, a little shiny, and unfamiliar. Nathan looked up, surprised. "I wonder who that is," he muttered, setting his glass down. Liam followed his dad's gaze and squinted. "It looks like a sports car. That's new around here." Nathan stood up, adjusting his shirt. "I'll go see." As Nathan walked toward the car, Liam stayed behind, curious. A woman stepped out of the car, her dark brown hair pulled back into a neat ponytail. She wore a casual yet stylish outfit with a bright smile and a warm presence. She looked familiar, but Liam couldn't quite place her. Nathan greeted her with a handshake, and she smiled back. "Hi, Nathan. It's good to see you again." Liam squinted from where he stood, and then it clicked. "Mrs. Patel?" Liam blurted out, his eyes widening. The woman laughed, walking toward Liam. "Looks like someone remembers me." Liam blinked. "You're Mrs. Patel? From when I was in 3rd grade, you were my science teacher." "Guilty as charged," she said with a wink. "I didn't expect to be recognized after all this time, but I suppose I'm lucky that you have a good memory." Liam's eyes widened in surprise. "Wow, it's been so long. What are you doing here?" Mrs. Patel turned to Nathan, who was standing with a thoughtful expression. "Well, I hope I'm not interrupting anything. I just thought I'd drop by and catch up. It's been so long, and I wanted to see how things were going with you and Liam. Nathan smiled warmly. It's been a while, hasn't it? Things have changed, but we're doing well. Liam couldn't help but notice how at ease his dad seemed around Mrs. Patel. She wasn't just an old teacher. She was someone who seemed genuinely interested in their lives. Well, it's nice to see you, Liam said, feeling a little awkward, but still glad to see a familiar face from his past. How have you been? I've been great, Mrs. Patel replied. I moved back to town a couple of months ago and was hoping to reconnect with some old friends. Nathan and I have been in touch for a little while, and he mentioned the two of you could use some good company. So, here I am. Nathan raised an eyebrow. You always know how to keep things interesting, don't you? Mrs. Patel laughed, a light and carefree sound. I try. Anyway, how about I stay for a little while and catch up with both of you? I'm sure Liam's got plenty of stories to share from his school days. Liam's eyes sparkled. I've got lots of them. Remember that science project I did on the solar system? It was the worst thing ever, but I think I learned more from failing it than I did from getting it right. Mrs. Patel chuckled. Oh, I remember. But you never gave up, did you? That's what I loved about teaching you. You were always willing to try again, no matter how tough things got. Nathan, watching them interact, couldn't help but smile. It was strange, seeing someone from his past connect with Liam like this. It was as though they were all finding their way back to normalcy, to a time when things were simpler. So, tell me, Mrs. Patel continued, how's life been treating you two? I heard about the wedding drama. I can't even imagine what you went through. Nathan sighed. It was a lot, but we're making it through, slowly but surely. Good, Mrs. Patel said kindly. I'm glad to hear that. Family's important, and it's clear that you two have a strong bond. Don't let anything get in the way of that. Nathan nodded. I won't. I've learned that the hard way. Liam glanced at his dad, sensing a deeper understanding between them. His dad was finally beginning to open up in a way he hadn't in months. It felt like they were moving forward, not forgetting what had happened, but accepting it and making space for new experiences. Would you like some lemonade? Liam offered. We just made some. It's really good. Mrs. Patel smiled. I'd love some. Thank you. As they all sat down, the conversation flowing easily between stories of the past and hopeful plans for the future, Liam realized that this moment was a turning point for them. It wasn't the end of the journey, far from it, but it was a new beginning. They were stronger now, wiser, and more united than ever before. And for the first time in a long while, Liam felt truly hopeful about what lay ahead. And that's the end of the story. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Your support and small effort motivated us to create the next video. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comment section. We'll definitely read and reply to your comments. See you soon in the next video. Until then, take care of yourself and your family. Bye-bye.